With that, I do want to thank and welcome everyone for attending today's Leading Patriots webinar. Really excited. I always say all of these I'm really excited for, but this one, there's definitely some that hold a more special place in my heart. As parents, right, you never say you love one kid more than another, but this is pretty close for me to get a panel convening on sports, entertainment, and what's going on, and how this industry has been impacted, and as well as what it means for us in our lives and just American society. So I'm really excited to get this one moving forward. My name is Brett Josephson. I'm an associate professor in the School of Business, and I'm also the director of executive development. I'm going to be leading the series, and we've been putting these on now for a couple of weeks. But just want to thank our panelists and thank the audience for showing up today for this session. A little bit about what's going to go on for the next hour. I'm going to just a brief introduction to what this series is and why we've brought it together as a partnership between executive development and the Mason alumni chapter. Then we're going to shift into the bulk of the hour, which is a conversation with our amazing panelists. We have Brad Edwards, Assistant Vice President and Director of Athletics for George Mason University, Amy Potter, who's the head of U.S. sponsorship for BM Financial Group, Malika Pereira, who is the Vice President of Major League Soccer on the partnership marketing side, and Callie Bronson, who's the Chief of Staff for the Cleveland Browns. We're going to be focusing on some select issues that are impacting that society or that industry in the sports world. And with that, I do want to encourage you in the audience to submit questions either through the Zoom Q&A feature or through the chat feature. I'll be monitoring both. We're going to try to reserve about the last 10 minutes or so for questions from the audience. If there's a pertinent one, I'll interject with that as well during the course of the topic. But just a little bit about this series before we get going a little bit more is this is an idea that was born out of both exec ed or executive development and the alumni chapter when we were sitting and having some conversations around what was going on due to COVID-19, due to kind of the marketplace to the environment right now. We wanted to provide a series or do a series that highlighted Mason Patriots, alumni in key industries that were going through enormous amounts of disruption and change. And then to give a voice to Patriots in those industries to talk about their experience and how they are leading their organizations through this period. And then to talk about what the future of these industries look like or future of these sectors. And so we've done a number of these already. We've had some on charities and nonprofits, on government contracting, on the food and restaurant industry. And we have a series more that'll be going for the rest of this month. So if you haven't seen them being promoted by the alumni chapter, look for your emails from that group. And one of the things I'm really proud of about this series is really for the first time in Mason's history as a university, we are getting speakers and content that span the breadth of the university. And so it's not just being led by the School of Business or by Volgenau, but it is really bringing all units together and bringing the family of George Mason together. So I really want to once again thank the Alumni Association, Jen Robinson, Michelle Murphy for helping put this together. Also on that side, Sumit Srivastava, who's the president-elect of the Alumni Association, and all the units in the university down at the college level to helping put this on and put this forward. It's been a really unique experience. So with that kind of a little bit just exec ed or executive development, what we do, we try to be that connection between you once you've graduated until the end of your career to provide expertise and provide you feedback and training from Mason's faculty so that you have the competencies, the skills, and the capabilities to thrive as you move forward in your career. So always reach out to us. We're here. The professors you took in your undergrad programs are a call away to be able to retrain or upskill you in whatever area that you see is going to be important for your own career development moving forward. I do want to encourage, if you haven't already, be connected with the Alumni Association. One of the things that resonates to me, and I am not a Mason alumni, but just somebody who works at this university, is the commitment that it takes to its graduates after the fact, or after the point in which you graduate. That once you are a Patriot, you are always a Patriot. And that sort of spirit does live within the units. I can, speak to the School of Business. Once you are done with your with your bachelor's or your master's, that relationship's not over. And we want to stay a part of your lives as you go through your career and as you live your life. And we have both partnerships with the Alumni Association and the units. We have we have resources that you are always, they're always available for you to take advantage of, whether it's career building, networking, other resources. So if you haven't had a chance, get connected with your Alumni Association, your local branch, and see what benefits and skills or benefits and resources you can take advantage of. So with that, I do want to give each panelist kind of a chance to give a very quick kind of bio overview of them. And what I think I'm going to ask, gave you a little bit of where they work. But my question is going to be for each of them, what is your favorite spot to be on campus? So give a very quick 30-second kind of, name, bio, but then also what was your favorite spot to hang out on campus? So Malika, maybe we can get started with you and we'll.
Sure. Malika Pereira, 1996 graduate, which doesn't seem as long ago as it sounds, but so I'm with Major League Soccer. I've been in the sports business for about 20 years now, a variety of different places, ESPN, US Olympic Committee, sports agencies, tennis, and now most recently soccer. It's a really exciting time for us in soccer because there's been so much interest, growth with the league, as well as a lot of excitement around the international teams I represent, which include US Soccer and the Mexican national team. It's an interesting time, as we'll go into a little bit later, but when I'm looking back at my time at George Mason, I spent a lot of time probably in the Rat in Sub 1. I don't even know if it's still there. So I don't know if that dates me, but I would say that is one of my fondest memories because we used to all gather with NC friends on a regular basis there.
All right, let's go with Amy, and then we'll say Brad for last. So we'll go Amy and then Callie.
Excellent. Well, I'm also an alum, graduated the same year as Malika. So we know each other pretty well. Before I give you my background, I'll tell you the Rat and the Sub 1 were where we hung out as well. So we spent a lot of time there. I really don't think they exist the way they looked when we were there, but it was definitely a wonderful experience. And I lived on campus all 4 years, which I think is unique, but it was a great opportunity to create friends, culture, and really have an experience to take on what I'm doing now. I actually, when George Mason, my prop, when we went to the Final Four, I helped create a group of George Mason. There were 5 of us that went to a local bar, and it became a Mason bar in Chicago. So that's how important George Mason has been to me. My career path started in our nation's capital. I worked for a sports network in DC. We covered, at the time, it was the Bullets, now the Wizards, the Orioles, and many other of the major teams. I had an opportunity to go over college athletics. So I did sales and marketing for University of Virginia, University of Maryland, and most recently Northwestern in Chicago. And one of my clients just said, hey, we'd love you to come to the dark side and work for the brand. So I work for a bank and I lead our US sponsorship portfolio. So I negotiate deals with the Bulls and the Blackhawks and the Wild and the many other colleges and pro teams. So I'm excited to kind of talk about the world and what we're doing to accomplish moving things forward in the new normal.
The chat has reminded me that the Rat ceased to exist this year. I believe it was torn down for when they knocked down Robinson and some of the other ones for all the construction going on on campus. So sorry about that one to Malika and Amy.
Sorry.
But Callie, what about you?
Yeah, I'm Callie, also a George Mason alum, Patriot through and through. Really happy to be on this call and be able to interact with you guys. I don't know if I can speak for the rest on this call, but this would have been something amazing for us when we were students, to be able to have. So I hope, everybody on this call in some capacity gets something out of this. But my career path in the NFL started a few years ago, mostly through internships. Obviously, the path for a female working on the football side of NFL is not very blazed at the moment, but I promise I'm working hard to change that. But I was with the Bills last year. This is my first year with the Browns. We're a brand new staff, chief of staff to the head coach. And it's a very fun job, a very busy job. And it's really a dream come true for me. it's the culmination of a lot of hard work and a lot of perseverance and a lot of the tools that I actually learned in my time at Mason, which has been the most special part to me and something that's given me a ton of pride as an alum. So my favorite spot, the Rat was there when I was there, but I will say I frequented Chick-fil-A probably way more than I should have. That was a staple in my daily routine.
I'd have to agree with that one. It's not that bad of a walk from Enterprise to get to Chick-fil-A. Brad, how about yourself? Not a Mason alum, but obviously someone.
No, it's great to be here, and I'm just so particularly proud of Callie and having been an NFL alum as a player for 9 seasons and 10 training camps. I'm just so excited to see you where you are and starting to bring some gender diversity into the NFL. So just kudos to you. Totally support what you're doing and hope we see tremendous growth for females and other racial minorities into leadership positions in the NFL, coaching and GMs and others. So that's just super exciting to see. I'm a University of South Carolina graduate where I was a All-American football player there, but my first day at Redskin Park, many of you know I played a good bit of my NFL career for the Redskins and won a Super Bowl with them. And my first day in March of 1990, we were wrapping up our mini camp day, and I was looking for somewhere to go find a track to run on. And I was about to, because the old park, there were just 2 old fields there, one AstroTurf, the old AstroTurf, which is like carpet on a sheet of concrete, and then and plastic carpet at that, and then one old regular grass field. And so we didn't really have a place to do speed training. So I was about to walk out and try to find an area track, and Daryl Green, who is also on our staff now at Mason, as many of you know, and has done a tremendous job, and 20-year NFL veteran, Hall of Fame, top 100 player in all-time NFL history, sees me walking out the door, and he goes, where are you going? I said, I'm going to try to find a place to run and track somewhere. And he says, well, why don't you come with us? We all go over to the track, and then there's a hill over at George Mason University, which is about 10 minutes away. So we all go over there and run. And so I jumped in the car with them. We went over and did, just had a great day. And so from that point on, we had many days, on the campus training, and the track that's still right outside my office today, and a hill that's part of it we cut out with the 123, campus drive underpass, but we left a little part of it there, and then going to shows in the old, Patriots Center, now Eagle Bank Arena. And so I've been very fortunate. I've been in athletics, pretty much for 46, 47 years from the time I started playing. My father was a coach and a Division I athlete and a minor league baseball player for a short period of time. And so I have an older brother that works in pro baseball. So we've lived this. I got my start 2 years after retiring from the NFL at the University of South Carolina, where I ultimately became their senior associate AD and chief financial officer. Was the AD at 2 smaller universities after that, at Newberry College and then Jacksonville University, and then had the wonderful opportunity 6 years ago to come to George Mason, and it's just been wonderful there. And so I'm involved in a lot of committees within the A10, and I also serve on the board of directors of the Military Bowl. So I've been very, very fortunate and love sport. As you'll see the picture behind me from the stadium in 3rd century Turkey, Anatolia then. So I just love the history around sport.
Right. In some of our earlier calls, Brad was going off on the cave paintings from 50,000 years ago that show humans engaging in sports.
15, yeah.
50, yeah. So this is something that is, I think it's going to be a great conversation today. So, once again, just thank you all for being on this. And now what I want to kind of focus for these first set of questions, really on the the beginning on kind of the operational side, because I think there's a lot of kind of confusion around what happened in the leagues, what happened in D1 when COVID hit and we were faced with this massive disruption to the normal calendar. And I thought, Malika, if you could start, like, so you're in season, something's happening, and all of a sudden, you're told you can no longer engage in games, and people can't come to the sporting event. So as MLS, what kind of conversations, and I know you work with CONCACAF and you work with the Mexican national team, US national team. So kind of walk us through, what are those early discussions that went through within the organization about how you were going to continue and what was going to be the plans moving forward within the leagues that you supervise?
Yeah, well, Major League Soccer is in a really unique position. We're the youngest professional league. We are celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. So unlike the other leagues that have gone through numerous or a couple of times of work stoppage, other, financial crisis, strikes, things like that, Major League Soccer had not really experienced it. So this, the coronavirus hitting and creating a national and global pandemic, which required us to cease play, was a true challenge. Major League Soccer is also a single entity, so we are very, very connected with our clubs. We have 26 clubs. And as you know, each city and state was facing different restrictions at different times. So it was difficult for the league to, first of all, make a decision to cease play, knowing that different clubs were at different stages of this. From a fan standpoint, it was going to be a big year, 25th anniversary. We have All-Star that was supposed to take place the end of July in Los Angeles, which was going to be a big celebration of our league. Our teams that we were launching, Miami, Nashville, big cities, excited for soccer. All of that got pulled back, which, is disappointing for the fan. But it's also disappointing for the area that I work in, which is partnership marketing. I manage several major brands, including Coca-Cola and AT&T. And, if you watch sports, you see those brands everywhere. So my conversations really focused on trying to work with those brands to understand what they were experiencing, because while we were no longer playing and had fans and players and staff to think about, my brands were thinking about things on a different level. Like, how are they going to supply product? How are they going to keep phone service? And so our conversations were, what is the role that soccer can play? How can we help you? And because there's so many unknowns, this is unprecedented. I mentioned this earlier in one of our internal calls, there's a lot of contingency planning and scenarios, and it takes a lot of work. My business is based in marketing and relationships. What's really hard is building virtual relationships when you're used to those face-to-face and be able to fly down, have that conversation, and creating that rapport and that trust in this new environment has been one of the things that I've focused on quite a bit.
Now, Callie, you mentioned in the call earlier, which I thought was interesting, is you're obviously you're a part of a new staff, a new group that's come into the Browns, and you're getting right to the point of OTAs and the drafts coming out, and all of a sudden you can't go in person and your operations kind of cease. But you have to instill a new system. You've got to do an entire new coaching staff of offense, defense. Can you what was it like in those days and the challenges you're still having around integrating new technologies or virtual learning into this new environment?
Yeah, so around the time that we figured out, that we were going to have to operate our program, and we were in a bit of a different boat. It wasn't a mid-season situation. It was, we, in a way, kind of had time to operate a plan as opposed to just kind of ceasing. Around the time we found out that we were going to have to operate our program virtually, it gave us a little bit of time to kind of collect. And that's when Coach and I got together and kind of said, we're a new staff. We have big challenges as it pertains to the curriculum we're going to try to unload on these players. And then, put yourself in a classroom setting. We have, after draft and signing undrafted free agents, we have 90 players on our rosters. And that's, multiple different learning styles and visual learners and so forth. And so you have to take all of that into account. So really, when we built our program, I kind of like the slide that you put up earlier that said empower, engage, and excel. was kind of similar to some of the principles that we tried to look into. We wanted them to feel confident in the material they were absorbing every day, not overwhelmed. We wanted the way that we were distributing material to be creative, which is a challenge within itself in a virtual platform. And then we wanted them to be able to take that and be able to move through the progressions of the program as well. So within itself, it becomes a challenge. And as a new staff, it kind of becomes all hands on deck as it pertains to ideas. And I think that's one of the biggest things when what you have to learn, no matter what level you're at, and no matter what industry you're in, is culmination and cohesiveness breeds success. Departments working together, we were able to pick the brains of some of the things that other departments were doing to be successful. Corporate partnerships, suites, like granted, that's not football applicable, but they all had very, very creative ideas. How are you engaging our sponsors? What kind of cool things are you doing? Have you found some creative tools, et cetera? So the challenge really comes down to being creative, but being effective. And then also making sure that the people who are distributing the information are very clear and concise on how this program is laid out, the purpose of every piece of it. So what we would do is, as we broke the program down into chunks that we were going to distribute to the players, we made sure we all got together and huddled up as a staff and said, does everybody understand the goal and why we're doing it this way? That way the message and how they were distributing information and communicating information was clear, and they knew, let's not jump ahead 2 phases. This is how it's broken up. This phase, this is what we're focusing on. And it ended up working really, really well for us. The interaction and the cooperation between coach and player ended up being very successful for us. So as much as you don't want to be in that boat, we learned a lot about ourselves as a staff. We learned a lot about ourselves as a team and organization, which are things that build character and build a culture that I keep telling everybody, once we get into the building, it'll be a breeze.
Right.
Patty, you make a comment just about technology. So as an organization that sponsors several NBA, NHL teams, you know, and we're going to people like Malika across the league saying, what are you gonna do for us? How can you help us? And then we're a bank. So how are we going to service our clients and still give them those once of a lifetime experiences, but now they can't meet the players or they can't get autograph items. So taking that virtual platform and bringing it to a more comfortable place in their home. And I was talking to someone recently, we didn't hang up we're still George Mason fans. We're still Bears fans. We're still whatever, you know, Redskins fans, whatever team you cheer for. You didn't hang up your sweater or your jersey or your scarf when you know, came home and were asked to stay home. So for me, as someone who's trying to get value out of their brand and get it from the leagues and the teams, how are we going to do that? And so, you know, the words overused, I feel like I use them every day. How is sponsorship and the brands, how are they pivoting and evolving to this new normal? I feel like it's sped up the industry about 2 to 3 years. We could still be doing some things, doing fine, but now in banking world, you know, most of us use our phones to bank, but there's a whole generation of people who don't. And so our increase in digital banking went up 50%. So you can see people are evolving. And when we look at the leagues and teams, we've really challenged them. We're doing BMO Fans at Home series where, you know, if you're a fan of Michael Jordan, he did a series called Last Dance. Well, we're having private events with clients where you get to hear Horace Grant's real behind the scenes story and what Tony Kukoc was really talking about with, you know, some biting. But it's fun. It's a way to do it. You know, we send them a RSVP, and on the RSVP, they have a link to get Uber Eats. So we try and create the experience at home. They're going to have dinner. They're going to have dinner with us, and we're going to have great dialogue. So it really is being creative, and this white space in my world is so exciting. It can be a little scary because we are testing things that we don't have as much control about. But it really, when you talk about technology and you talk about the hard conversations that you're having with partners, those are things that are very exciting to see where we can go in the future with sports and with the passionate fans.
And Amy, I want to pull back or, you know, continue to pull on that thread around technology and what this is going to be. And before that though, Brad, I wonder if you can kind of give us, so, you know, we've looked at some professional leagues now we start, you know, with your perspective, both you have experience in the NFL but obviously you're, elbow deep into the idea of college athletics and what it means. And this came at one of the worst times for the NCAA, right? Most of their revenue has come from basketball. Everybody thinks it's football, right? But it's the tournament that drives the vast majority of NCAA revenue, and that gets taken away. So you're an AD, you're sitting there, your sports are getting taken away. And what was it like for those first couple of weeks as the athletic director of a Division I athletic program, and you see an entire calendar of events taken away?
Yeah, it was very interesting. We could kind of see it starting to build a little bit. So we, started to take apply some more critical thinking around it, as the lead up to, when we ultimately canceled the men's basketball tournament. Of course, we were in New York. I was there with our men's basketball team as they were playing in the Atlantic 10 men's basketball tournament. We had already won one game and were preparing for a second game. We were literally about to walk out of the hotel, the Brooklyn Bridge Marriott, get on the bus and head over to the gate when I saw a tagline on the TV that said the Big Ten had just canceled their tournament. I was like, this thing's done. Like, it's over. And like 2 minutes later, I got a call from the commissioner. And so, but we had been meeting every night with our management team there. We had already put together a crisis management team. And then, with an idea of let's start to develop a plan. The day before, I had been on a call with all 14 presidents from the colleges and universities that make up the member institutions in the Atlantic 10. And I could tell by the tone and concern in their voices that this was just a matter of time before this happened. And I could just start to see myself, okay, they're getting, as spring sports get ready to start, there are going to be a couple 100,000 student athletes and staff every week crisscrossing the country, in and out of buses, in and out of hotels, in and out of airports. That this is just not going to happen. Like, there's just no way. And so we could kind of see that trend developing a little bit. And we with our crisis management team, then we formed we developed some principles and some priorities with a view toward a cascading management style and communication style that we hope would create some creative thinking that would then rebound, and we could all sort of meet in the middle with a management approach and a management technique. And so immediately we were on the bus going back to Northern Virginia, working on all these things. Most of our student athletes were on spring break. We have 500 student athletes, and probably 250, close to 275, full-time, part-time staff and volunteers. So we had a big group. A lot of them, the students were not on campus, and we had to figure out at that point, how to convert everything that we did to an online delivery system, with the exception of hosting an event. So all the equipment, all the rehab, all the strength and conditioning, all the academic support, equipment, all of those things, guidance and counseling and mental health and all of those things, and then do all of that from moving all 250 to 275 people to their homes to be able to do all of that. So it was a real credit. And within 10 days, we were really up and running, maybe even before that. And academics just did an unbelievable job, and our faculty and staff just, and I say it many times, I say we're in the business of teaching innovation. Many times we practice it the least. This was not one of those times. I mean, everyone just jumped in and made that happen across the board. And it was, I will tell you, it was seamless. And very, very few complaints. Our student athletes had an unbelievable spring semester academically. We've gotten all those grades in. Once again, they've outperformed the student body. They've done a tremendous job. And so, now it's going to be the challenge of how do we get them back, and what does, that next phase look like? What does the fall look like? Do we have fans? we know that, a lot of our pro leagues are going to sort of lead that, charge. And so we're watching what they do, and how that, but what we know is that higher ed is extraordinarily important as, to the fabric of our society, the 3 to 4 million people that it employs, plus just what it, in terms of, a bulk of your research now is done by higher ed as opposed to, within corporate America. And so it's so vital to, workforce, providing skilled workforce labor, and others that, you in the business school certainly know more than ever, and just what sport means, to our society as a whole. Again, going back to the, the chariot races and javelin throwing that were probably happening in that, 300 BC. So yeah, it was a huge challenge for us, and just required, 7 day a week, management for us. That's now starting to kind of, managing fatigue now is staff fatigue is really, I'm having to order people to put a out of the office tag on their email, and so make them take time, because I can really tell the fatigue that's that's happening in those folks now. So.
And Malika and I were talking about that actually at the beginning of the call in work habits. But, Brad, you mentioned something that I spent the majority of my collegiate career in the training room hurt. And so I was trying to think in my mind of like, okay, I was constantly pulling my hamstring.
I never went in the training room. I made them hand me my tape. I wouldn't even cross the line at the door. I'm like, hand me my tape. I'll tape myself.
I'll give a shout out to my collegiate coach, Wayne Phipps, but do not let your children be hurdlers. You just get hurt a lot. And like, I was thinking,
my kids wouldn't do that at 14, much less 54.
But so I was just thinking, like, the idea of how to do rehab virtually, and Callie, I'm sure, if you look at it to your organizations, like that has just got to be like how I could have done that, how I could have maintained my body as an athlete in this environment, in these leagues, has got to be crazy, which leads to the next step, the next kind of question and theme I want to address with the audience or with the panel is around this idea of this hybrid nature that sports are going to take in the immediate future. Yeah. And so, Malika, your organization, the MLS has announced it's going to come back in some form. NBA is coming back, and you guys are both going to be in Orlando. So, if we kind of talk about it, and then Callie, we're going to go to you in terms of the NFL. But if we look at, let's say the NBA and MLS, obviously with your experience, this new hybrid form of what sport's going to look like with fans, without fans, virtual engagements with fans. Can you kind of talk about what are you envisioning for MLS and what this might look like for the average fan of these teams?
Sure. It's going to be very different. Anyone who's been to an MLS game, I know the DC area just opened the new Audi field. I think it was last year. Our fan experience is so core to the sport, the chants, the supporter section. One of the things that we've been trying to figure out with our tournament, it's a tournament style that's going to take place over several weeks in Orlando, is how we bring that alive. Watching matches on TV, great. You're so excited. We've been craving live sports. So we believe our viewership and our fans are going to be excited to see that. But you still want that community feel, that cheering, that like the high-fiving when there's a great play and a score. We're trying to use technology, and we're also trying to lean on our partners to see how they're engaging with fans and consumers as well. It's a bit of an unknown. I know some of the leagues in Europe have tried various things, from large cutouts in the stands to virtually inputting some fan watch parties, piping in noise and sound. I don't think anyone has mastered it quite yet, but I think we're close. I think also in the long run, what's a little bit different, and I think football's in the same boat as us, NBA and NHL are a little bit different, but we're in an outdoor arena. I know a lot of stadiums and facilities are working through what does that mean? How is seating capacity reduced? How do we still have that experience and allow people to experience it? One of the things that we're hearing from our partners as well as our fans is that some are ready to get back out. some are ready to still stay home. And so it's allowing those fans that have different points of view on how they want to engage with the sport, opportunities to do that. There's not going to be a cookie cutter solve for it by any means. And I think there's going to be bumps in the road. I think over the course of our tournament, you're going to see us try a lot of different things. And I think that's really exciting. We have so many more opportunities. And Amy even mentioned it with like Uber Eats, using social media, using the technology that we're using right now. How do we engage with players more? Is there going to be more miking of coaches and players, different camera angles, because we don't have fans sitting there? I think this challenge is going to actually create more innovation, which is probably needed for the sport.
Right. I think you brought up some really interesting points there about the idea of innovation and fan experience, and watching kind of the Bundesliga now, who was first out of the gate, right? I think people have been surprised kind of how even the sound of the game is different without fans in the stands. I think, Brad, somebody who's been in the NFL, been around athletic scout, I don't think they can mic up the players, because if you actually, in practice, there's a lot of words that are not going to to be allowed in
the beeps for 3-second delay.
Time in an NFL locker room. It's
right.
well, when I played, we didn't have HR rules. At least we have those now. But it's funny, Malika, I just sent an article about the cardboard cutouts of the stands to our head of external affairs, and said, "Hey, this is a pretty interesting concept right here. We can fill the stadium."
But I love the idea of how it can innovate for the fan experience, because I've read some things from owners, and Callie, I think it'd be interesting to see maybe what you're hearing in the NFL, but where you see like in the NBA, owners like Mark Cuban has been quite adamant that they hadn't been doing enough in terms of innovating the fan experience, and it was still the same model from the 60s and 70s. There's so much more we can do now with technology to integrate into the game. So are you seeing anything from the NFL side about this new season being an opportunity to be innovative and, as Amy's point, right, move the innovation forward in a way we haven't before?
Well, I think now is an extremely exciting time to not only work in sport, but to study sport, because whatever happens over the course of the next year is going to change the entire landscape of sport as we know it. It's going to reveal a lot of things. It's going to reveal a lot of things that, much like what you guys said, we've been missing the whole time and had no idea, and had to kind of have our backs against the wall to think about those things. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. One of the examples that I use that I think is an incredible case study as it pertains to the NFL is what happened and how successful actually the 2020 NFL draft was. And and everybody kind of went into a panic, and Twitter was up in arms. This isn't right. This doesn't feel right. There's not going to be the stage. You're not going to see your first 20 picks walk up and hold the jersey. And there was a lot of talk about it. And then in hindsight, after it was over, it was actually rated one of the best and most viewed, and even in the late rounds drafts in the since the draft has been aired in that capacity. And the fact that the viewership in the later rounds was higher than ever says a lot about how the fans felt more engaged, and the feedback. The data that they got back was they felt like they understood the players and the draft picks a lot more. You're sitting in Joe Burrow's home and you have this image of Joe Burrow and where he comes from. And it's actually, he's, from a small town in Ohio and these different roots. And that wasn't what you imagined after you see him hoisting the national championship trophy. So, that kind of stuff really engaged the fans. And, for our fan base, if anybody knows anything about, I was with Buffalo last year, it's very similar here in Cleveland. Like, these people are gung-ho about Cleveland Browns football. They felt a deeper connection with our draft picks than they've ever felt before. They felt like they knew who they were, they believed in it, and they understood where we were coming from as an organization in drafting them by learning more about who they were. And I think that was really incredible and something to really take note of from a fan experience standpoint, that, the original plans for the draft were for it to be in Vegas, and they were going to put the draft picks in a boat and move them across water. Like, it was crazy. And you couldn't have had a more polar opposite situation. It ended up being incredibly successful. So I think that's a really interesting way to look at what is it that fans are actually really looking for, What is it that they're looking for?
And as a sponsor,
Go ahead. Sorry.
as a sponsor, that's what we're looking for. So when I'm looking at where the commissioner's standing and there's a Beats logo back here, and then they're casually doing this, and when we get to go in their homes, what headphones are they wearing? These are details as sponsors are looking at integrating their brand. We have to find an authentic way. So the word authenticity still has to live, but it has to live in the virtual world that we're in. You know, are we, so I believe, and I have no proof, but you know, the people who are helping broadcast are sending them their beats. They're sending them their items that they should put out for the draft. Obviously, we know that with the right protections, the commissioner had people come in and get his basement all set up and had it all in order. But everyone I'm seeing is, that's what partners are looking for. And that's what we're paying for, is that connection, but it has to be, you know, authentic. Am I drinking my, you know, Gatorade? Where's my logo? And what does it mean? Is it just
Right.
white
But
noise?
what Budweiser did and Anheuser-Busch did with the draft was really great. And I think that's where the NFL showed a lot of flexibility and creativity, knowing that booing the commissioner is such a big part of the draft and like the physical presence and there that, and I don't know if everyone knows, but Anheuser, I work with them. And so I got to the insider knowledge there, but they worked with the NFL to create a hashtag like boo the commissioner during the NFL. And the commissioner actually got involved in it too and was part of the whole program and campaign. So from my side, on the property side, and Amy, I'm going to assume from a partner side, it was making the best out of the situation, you know, showing flexibility, getting creative, thinking of the fan, thinking of the experience, and like pulling it all together. And quite honestly, like that whole thing happened within days. So I thought that was just a great example about how the NFL was really creative in this.
And the one thing I will add is the purpose, the community, the social justice initiatives that we're seeing with brands and we're seeing with leagues. You know, I was talking to their community relations person, and you're right, they only had a certain amount of time to figure out how they were going to enhance those community elements. And that's important to brands who authentically live it. And I keep saying authentic because I think that's the thing. In real life and in virtual, you still need to be the same brand, same human. So when we look at those things, I was very proud to see they continued their community involvement, and they made it a part and a center of the broadcast, which is very important to some brands as well. So I'm seeing purpose becoming more and more important, but actually being authentic in your purpose and living your purpose is the other thing.
I think too, one of the really cool things and about a conversation like this, you know, I could sit on this panel for the next 12 hours and just talk through all of these things, because the great part is, you know, as it pertains to fan engagement and all of those things, that is not my wheelhouse. I come from a football standpoint. Like, I can tell you how many reps we need to do in each period at practice and this, that, and the other, but there's a lot of information that fan engagement can get from me, and there's a lot of information that I can get from fan engagement. And when I say I really think this is going to change the landscape of sports, I think it's going to change the landscape of sports within these buildings as well. Because for so long in sports, there's been this divide between the sport specific and then the wheels that keep the building moving, fan engagement, ticket sales, corporate partnership, all of these things. There's been this great divide. And now this is going to force everybody to work together to be able to reach a common goal, and that's engage our fans. On our end, win football games, because if anything, it's extremely important right now. But keep our fans engaged and make them feel like they're a part of a process in a place like this where the culture of it is so important. It's important that every person in the building works together, you know, to be able to make a success out of a situation, you know, and we've seen in all of our studies and all of our work how important sport is to society and to people, and how much it drives them and energizes them, and it helps them be optimistic about the future and so forth. You know, I think that it's really, really important that we as organizations, the MLS as a league, everybody comes together for one common goal.
Yeah, and what we've seen, and really this, the meeting the demands of a changing consumer base has really been building for some time. I mean, that's really been, brought about, ushered in really a few decades ago by linear TV, and then, really just exploded with the internet. And that what the internet did for our business has, just particularly in college sports is just, grown at like no other time we've ever seen. And so we also have to recognize what it is that we're competing against, which is, I was sitting outside last fall watching, actually it's spring, watching an XFL game, XFL. And I was sitting there and I was telling somebody who was with me, I said, this is what we're competing against right here. I'm sitting outside in my backyard on our patio, smart TV, big, huge screen. I've got my own bathroom, our refrigerator in the garage. The kids are running around. I never had to get in the car and go anywhere. And I said, that's the competition that we're facing, and the kind of experience that we're going to have to figure out how we deliver, to our customers and to our partners. And a lot of that is, and I love Amy's points about purpose and authenticity, and people, if you're not authentic and you don't mean what you say, people see right through that, and they want. And there's always going to be that space for somebody who wants that experience, who wants that live experience that I just can't get. It's just not the same as sitting at home, but it has. We have seen that where we sell a lot more 3 or 4 or 5 game mini packs as opposed to a full game season ticket package. For that reason, in and of itself. And so we have to really think through, the kind of access that we provide, unique access that we provide people, the unique experiences that, we can deliver to them, and how we can continue to build a relationship and communicate a sense of, and I love Amy's point on this, sense of purpose around what we do.
Right. And for Mason, and having been around, and the Green Machine is as good of a draw to any game as the game itself, and that experience. And one of the things, and before we get to kind of the last point, is I think fans want engagement and feel belonging and connection to a team. And where tension exists is where the team, and Callie, I think on your side, the operations side, doesn't reciprocate that feeling back to the fans, right? They want to bleed and be a part of the process and the innovation. And the teams that have a lot of success integrate that really well into this holistic view of what the fan experience is. And this kind of be the last point, the last kind of question to the team. But, Brad, I think Brad, Amy, and all of you kind of hit on these threads, but participation in live sports had been going down, right? We had been seeing a drop in attendance across all sports, and especially with collegiate football. The big SEC schools were still trying, but a lot of the other schools were really struggling. And we were seeing that demands on our time and what we could else be doing with our time was making it that live sports had a competition that they hadn't faced before. And so as we look at this now as a disruptive event that's going to cause a change in the fan experience, what does the future of sport and live events look like to you guys, to you all as a panel, in terms of what we're going to do, right? And what is that going to be? And how are we going to get fans back into attendance, back coming to live events? Or is it an integration of virtual with the physical?
I'll start real quick because, my influence is not, it's more of a fan than it is, the teams and leagues will go through and find out if it's safe. They'll work with the government to figure out the right way. They'll figure out masks. We are a season ticket holder with many NFL, NBA, NHL, baseball teams. And so we're hearing from them, like, if you have 4 seats, 2 can go to this game and 2 can go to that game, and you get every other package. So there's interesting things coming out, and no one really knows obviously yet what it'll look like. But personally, I want to be able to go to games. However, I'll wear my mask. I'll do what you tell me to do. I'll follow. I'm a big rule follower. I'll sanitize. I'll take my temperature. So I am good. But we understand we have clients that aren't comfortable, maybe because of their age or because they have a pre-existing condition. So we want to make sure that they still have the experience that they have, and they can do it from their home and still be a fan of the team.
Maybe Malika, if you could give final thoughts, and we'll get there are some questions from the group. So.
I think some of the MLS clubs have already started, outside of the social distancing and all the safety things, I think they've started thinking about the fan experience at live events a little bit differently. I think Atlanta United is a great example. And Arthur Blank applied it not just to soccer, but as well as to the NFL team, the Falcons, but being really cognizant about ticket prices and other aspects of live events that make it really prohibitive for fans to engage. The fact that there is a significantly lower price on food and beverage when you go to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Hot dogs, I think, are like $2 or $3. Sodas are $4 versus, what you experience at other stadiums. And we've seen the results. As a soccer team, we can sell out Mercedes-Benz, which is remarkable because it is affordable. And we know that COVID has impacted families very severely, not just from the health and wellness, but from the financial security. And sports is an escape for people. So I think all teams are going to have to really look at what does that mean? How do we get people there when they don't have the disposable income that they used to have?
We worked concessions at the University of Oregon basketball games for 4 years for our football team's fundraisers. So that was, you talk about ticket prices and then concession prices. That's how we were able to afford new equipment as a football team in high school.
Yeah.
But I'm going to turn to some of the audience questions, and we're going to save the last little bit, I think, to talk about Mason football.
Let me say one thing, if I could, before we get that. People are not consuming less sports today. They're consuming more. We're just consuming them in a different way. So I want to make sure I'm really clear on that. The shift from linear TV to digital, has skewed some of those numbers. And I just think in some of the, there's just a lot of content out there too. So some of the maybe SEC football teams or so, they may see a slight decrease in some of the, their attendance, but I've also often equated it to, buying a stock that at one point was $50 a share and is now $1,200 a share, and you're getting it at $1,000. So, you know what I'm saying? It's just you're still at a very, very high point, and as we continue to grow as a country, I think it's going to, we will continue to see this consistent growth and consumption of sport and live sport.
No, totally agree. Obviously, we see that with the team valuations. If you look at Forbes and both the NFL, NBA, MLB, all of them are way up, 200-300% in 5 or 6 years. So I want to bring up there's 2 points, questions that came up in the chat that somewhat linked together. Is this integration of the esport environment with the live sport environment? And so are we going to see more of these partnerships with the growth of esports and the collaboration between the leagues and properties like Fortnite and with the other ones of doing some sort of integration and collaboration for the fan experience?
For soccer, absolutely. FIFA is such a big game. One of the facts that we found out is that MLS actually has an uplift from players, for gamers that are playing FIFA. Sometimes how they're introduced to MLS, if they haven't been following it, they might be, choosing an MLS team or an MLS player for their virtual game or their e-gaming. So during the pandemic, we actually had an e-MLS tournament. So I think you'll be seeing a lot more integrations.
Brad, what do you think from the collegiate sports side? Obviously, that's a different discussion, but yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting. I think we have to do that. I mean, it's just where we're going. And what you're seeing on the esports side and the growth of that platform and the viewership. I mean, some of the numbers are just extraordinary. And so we have to figure that out. And some of that has been, some programs or some colleges have adopted built their own program under their NCAA or under their athletic department umbrella. The NCAA has yet to wrap its arms around it because they're still trying to figure, they have too much for what they are already doing. And many of us are, struggle with the resources to support the athletes that we have now. And you're trying to keep up with the significant and meteoric growth and investment around football and men's basketball, and make sure you don't leave everything else behind. And so you're struggling from a resource allocation perspective, and how do I take this on? But I just think we have to figure that out, and it is going to be a part of our future. And how do we put this game within a game, for example, and how can we weave those kinds of ideas and creative and innovative thinking into what we do, and bring that onto our current platforms.
Amy, do you see kind of a shift in corporate sponsorships getting involved as we look at an integration of esports, proliferation of esports, and collaboration with the traditional leagues?
There is an interest, and we've definitely been watching. We're a bank, so we're a little more conservative. There are some banks already out there, East Coast banks, that are taking the charge, getting on the jerseys, doing that. We want to sit back a little bit and watch, and maybe it's more of a personal opinion. There's things around it. We've actually done some stuff in Canada with our soccer teams up there that we're kind of dabbling in. We also need to see what the player restrictions are and some of the things on the players, because there's a lot of rules that our current pro league players have to go through, whether it's drug testing and all those things. So we also want to make sure the leagues are doing what they're doing to protect the players and the league. So we've got an eye on it. We know it's there. Oh, I think we have a special guest soon. We have an eye on it, and we know it's there, but it'll be interesting to kind of see the direction where it goes.
My 2-year-old loves to join my MBA classes when I teach virtually, so I'm excited that Brad's daughter is going to.
I can teach you how to throw this thing. Thumb to pocket.
So,
right, Callie?
Right. That's right.
We have had a couple questions, and I don't want to call on anybody for this, and feel free, to answer it if as you feel appropriate. There's a constant debate now in society. If I look at my, as we called, and to having the pre-call, most of my Twitter feed or social media feed is all sports related, reporters, writers, whatever. You get this tension between stick to sports and sports being a vehicle for society right now. And I'm not even sure how to summarize best the questions that are coming into the chat, but the idea basically is, should sports be separate from our lives and separate, and unique from politics and social movements, or should there be an integration and continued discussion around the advocacy that athletes can have and sports can have in our society? So I don't want to call on anybody for this, but this is something you feel passionate about and want to speak to.
I'll take off my BMO hat and I'll do personal opinion, not the opinion of the bank. But the reason why I work for the bank is because they do have strong opinions on social justice and LGBTQ and a lot of things that, women, and a lot of things that I support and believe in. So that's why I work for the organization. And they're a company that puts their word out there. They educate, they learn, and then we take action. Yes, we donated a big chunk of money, but now we're also taking action, not just with the money that we donated. I believe because sports is so integrated into our world, and especially college athletics was integrated into mine, it really is an opportunity for these players to help us create dialogue and conversation. And if you sit down with your children or you sit down with a group of people and you can say, well, what did LeBron talk about? Well, what do you think about that? I really think it is an opportunity. Personal opinion, I know other people feel that they should just play the game, but sports are a major part of a lot of our lives, at least on this call. And I think it's a good way to bring in families and create conversations.
I'll add from our perspective, and I'll have a little bit of my personal opinion intertwined in this, but only because Coach Stefanski, our head coach, has made it very clear to our entire staff and our players that, words are great, but it's time to get in the arena. And that's something that we have repetitively said, throughout, what we're doing is clearly it's enough about talking, more about doing. So, it goes back to the age old, and I even hate saying it out loud because it just makes me angry. But the shut up and dribble analogy of is that all that a professional athlete is good for? And that drives me crazy working with these extremely intelligent and how energetic and how passionate they are, how they all come from so many different backgrounds and then all come together as a family and stand up for each other. For me, it's extremely empowering. So when you talk about, like, I saw something the other day that I thought was super empowering, like we as a society need to take on the locker room mentality. Like, hey, we all just walked in the door from wherever we came from. Some of us have massive houses, some of us don't, but we're a family. We're going to stick up for each other. We're going to play for each other and so forth. I think that that's such a vehicle, for the world to see a group of athletes, and especially out on a virtual environment. They don't even get to sit in a room together, and they still find a way to come together to stick up for each other and to love each other, to empower each other, to encourage each other to take action is amazing. And for me, I think sports are such a vehicle for what it's the reason why sports and culture and society is even a class you take for a semester, because it is that rooted in everything that we do. And anybody who tells you differently, ask them how they feel on a Monday after a Browns loss, because it totally changes the entire direction of their entire day. Sports are a vehicle for so much, as it pertains to every single individual, in society. So I find it hard to ever have that argument that our athletes should not use their platforms in positive ways. Our athletes should not be able to speak their minds, and that our athletes should be put in a category of that's it. It's to me, it's just very hard for me to wrap my head around how that could be a mentality.
Yeah, and I would add, like, on a personal level, I've always believed that sports is a unifier. And so I think that is a unique role that leagues and players and athletes have. They can unify. I also think personally that people learn and are influenced in many different ways. And if someone sees an athlete as a role model and someone that they would like to emulate, it's a great opportunity for that athlete to have a positive impact.
Yeah, no, I agree with all these great comments, and absolutely, believe in our platform being one which can be a model for, to the world of how we should treat each other, and just with just basic dignity and respect. And it's, we talk about sportsmanship all the time, and it just is, it's a wonderful place to what Callie touched on earlier, is it's an amazing place to come together and show the world how people from all over, in all different walks of life, beliefs, religious beliefs, socioeconomic backgrounds can come together and can be friends and can just be kind to each other. And that's, that has always been my, throughout my life has been in my father's, fortunately, I've just been very, very fortunate that I've been in an ecosystem that has helped me see life in a very, very different way from, the athletes that my father coached, who I have a great picture in my office of him coaching basketball in Fayetteville, North Carolina in 1972. Very diverse group of athletes around him, black, white, and young people who I looked up to. Like, I mean, they were bigger than life. I mean, I just love these guys, Solomon Everett and Joe Jenner and others. But and I have that picture in my office for a reason, so that when people come in, it'll spur a little bit of a conversation that starts out with, or somebody will ask. And I said, yeah, that's my dad. That's 1972, and I was, 5-6 years old. And I said, but what's interesting is that the black players around him just 6 years earlier couldn't vote. So that, I can't get my head wrapped around that. And so that starts a great conversation. And I'm very fortunate that we're in the education business, and Joe Gibbs was very much like that as a coach. When I played for the Redskins, is he was always taking on these issues, forcing us to have real conversations about real life issues. And that's what we've tried to do at Mason is to treat all of these things as, an educational opportunity, get people to come together, talk about issues, understand not only your side of a conversation, but somebody else's side, where they are coming from, and try to take a moment and try to walk in someone else's shoes for a couple of minutes, and let's come together and form a relationship around that. And out of that, we can grow. And so I've always taken that position as in sport, and that it can be, to Malika's point, a tremendous unifier and not a divider.
I want to thank all of you for both coming on today, taking time, and we talked about some amazing, kind of the growth and future of sports, but also even this last point, whether, the question kind of was kind of came from the chat and different things, but to me, it resonates with what George Mason and George Mason University is about and the ideals of our institution. That what you just discussed resembles what Mason's trying to do and what we do, right? And Brad can, I know he would agree with me on this. Like, Mason walks the walk when it comes to this as a university, right? That these are the ideals that we stand for as faculty, as administrators, as people. So, really, it's proud as a employee of the university to hear our alumni talk about it. This is gonna be our last. We've well past the hour. I want to thank you all for coming. We have webinars coming up in the next couple weeks. We got a great one on Monday about the banking and personal wealth management area. So if you want to hear about kind of what to do with your personal finances,
I'm not coming back. I have no knowledge of that.
Tune in on Monday. We've got stuff in the education industry talking about how K through 12 is going to be impacted on HR. So continue to look for that. And Brad, I'm going to ask for one last point from you before we end. When are we getting a football team at George Mason University?
You know what? If someone would bring me a little bucket of money tomorrow, I could probably get it started. But it's going to probably take a little bit of to the tune of about 50 million or so north of that, and without it being a zero sum game on some other resource. But as we know, it can do a tremendous amount for your university, but it doesn't come without an upfront cost to doing that. But if it comes to time to picking a coach, I can call Callie and we can figure it out, and we can teach them how to set up and defend the zone read and all these other things that are going on, and so we can figure it out.
Brad, I'm ready when you are. Aside from the 50 mil, I don't think I can help too much there, but the other piece.
Yeah, I'm a little short on that one too. That 1993 contract doesn't go but so far.
Well, I just looked at the attendees. Samit, I see you're still on, so we got something else to work on and some of our mini initiatives of some additional things to do. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for the attendees. Really appreciate it. I think we definitely need to have some more of these around sports, and love to get your thoughts and continue these conversations. So Malika, Callie, Amy, Brad, thank you so much. This was awesome, incredible, and look forward to staying engaged in the coming months.
Go Mason.
There you go.
Mason.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.
Bye.